You are listening to Rocklaz Radio, a place where we discuss inspiring personalities and interesting things. I am your host, Tanmay Shah. I'm an NFT artist and an entrepreneur with diverse business experience. This show is self sponsored. If you want to support this show, make sure you check out and buy my NFTs and become a patron. Because, as you know, what's a pizza without cheese? And what is your collection without a Tanmay NFT? If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and share this with your friends. Check out the description for all the links. Today is a very special episode. We are joined by Ali Sabet himself. Sabet, arigato gozaimasu.
Arigato gozaimashita.
Thank you so much for coming. Ali Sabet is an Iranian American artist, designer, energy healer. His works shines with vibrant optimism, love and beauty in the face of the profane. Sabit's work has been showcased around the world in collaboration with luxury brands such as Mont Blanc, Furla, BMW, Tesla, John Vervettos, and more. He is one of the top-selling NFT artists in the world. Sabit has always been fascinated with the link between creativity, healing. After returning from his trip to Tokyo, Sabit has had a profound moment of clarity that changed his life. Since then, he has been able to write in mysterious language known as love scripts, which contains healing codes that have offered collectors profound experience. We are so glad to have you today, Sabit. Welcome to Rocklaz Radio.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me on this show. It's awesome. It's always wonderful listening to you in spaces, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad. So, Sabit, please tell us a bit about yourself, about your life story. How did it all get started?
My creative journey goes back almost 25 years, maybe longer if you think about starting out as a kid, drawing all the time. And in 1999, I started to work as a branding guy, as a advertising art director. So I worked for a big agency called Draft FCB as a junior art director. And it was fun. I got to do a lot of work for Taco Bell. I don't know if you know the national chain Taco Bell. I did a lot of work for them. And that's where I learned all my design skills. And then after about 9 months of that, I went out on my own and really focused on branding, strategy, design, logo development, website development, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's kind of where it started, right? And and then on the side of it, I also was drawing characters and different paintings and art and all that good stuff as well. And that took about, I want to say, the past 25 years of designing to make a living, creating, to pay for the bills and raise kids, and then at the same time drawing and painting on the side and creating characters, which is my two other worlds, right? So character work like Pixel Pop, Ugly Kitties, Tokyo Punks. These are kind of the brands, and then the paintings being, the female-centric pieces, the love script, the black and gold, all of the thematic stuff that I've been doing for quite a while.
Wow, amazing. We see a lot of Japanese style and use of Japanese brush in your works. So, how did your fascination for Japan and the Japanese art style come in?
My fascination with Japan, I think, started as a very young kid. I was probably 7 or 8 the first time I went to Tokyo. I was born and raised in Iran. My dad was an airline pilot, so we got to go places. Yeah. And early on, we got to go to Tokyo, and I never forgot that feeling, that energy. And I think when I came back, when we moved to the United States, my fascination with Hello Kitty started. and Sanrio. I loved characters and putting, seeing them on little objects was amazing. I call it the Hello Kitty complex because it seared in my mind and brain and heart that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create this world of characters that people would love to have on different items. The issue was with that was that I didn't recognize that I should be drawing them rather than just designing them. So that was kind of a process that came along later on. But yeah, that was kind of the beginning of it. I also naturally gravitated towards like Japanese martial arts, Shotokan, karate, which I trained for like 20 years.
Wow.
And then in 2016, I actually got to go. But before I went, I had kind of discovered these lower quality Japanese brushes, and I felt more like a painter when I did. And I was able to express what was coming through, whether it was my emotions or something from elsewhere. It started to flow through me through these brushes and inks. I felt more connected to the art, and I felt like I was an artist. It just where you have that imposter syndrome when I was holding a regular brush with what is that called, acrylics and things like that, because it was too slow moving for me, right? I needed to express consistently. I needed things to flow through me versus like, let me draw this beautiful little face or something. It just didn't work that way for me. And so once I went to Tokyo in 2016 and found bought some real brushes connected to the land over there, I felt I was home. I felt absolutely like I was from there at some point in time. And I continued to go back for different reasons. For example, I have done 3 different shows there at the International Tokyo Art Fair. And to be able to go back and paint in the streets and paint in Kyoto, and just as I took in the energy and came back, it really helped me go through a healing process that was very accelerated, very fast, and I came back home different every time.
Wow. So you have learned the Japanese script as well? I see those, or is that your own language?
That's my own language. It kind of has a Japanese flow. Sometimes, because of its mystical nature, there is times where you have Japanese people or Chinese or even Sanskrit. Different languages have been able to read full sentences and full information comes through in multiple languages in it, including English. So there's been times where I've told people who they're going to meet next or who they're going to be marrying or the future of, I paint situations also before they happen.
Wow.
So a lot of my work has been, I hate the word prophetic, but they've had a lot of messages of what's to come. I have a painting a few days before the pandemic started that showcases the entire story of the pandemic, for example. These things are very natural. They come in all the time. So it's pretty amazing how my work has gone from characters and cute stuff, which I call whimsical work, to mystical. And it wasn't on purpose, but it was. I don't know how to explain that. I welcomed it a lot of times, even though I wasn't ready for it. When the script showed up, it took me 6 months for me to accept that fact, because I thought I was going crazy. I was like, what is this? My own language? This is crazy. I don't want it. And then the first time that it showed, like somebody bought a piece, they took it home and they messaged me and they're like, oh my God, the name of my wife is in this piece in clear English. And I didn't do it for them. I didn't even know they were married, this person, and the information was in it. So ever since then, I've done that hundreds and hundreds of times. And then in 2019, the energy healing work also started, which I had been chasing since I was a kid. I loved that stuff, but it never worked until 2019, where it was pretty amazing, the things that I've been able to help do.
I didn't know about this aspect and being able to predict through the artworks. So That is incredible. When did this start? How many years ago?
So I want to say the predictions and painting people before I meet them. The first time happened in a coffee shop. I wish I'd shared with you some of these images because they're pretty crazy.
Can
I
I?
was,
Is it there on your website? We can pull it up.
it's not because they're like personal pictures that I kind of show on my phone, but I don't have it. But I'll explain. Like I was painting, the women figures and things like that in a coffee shop, and then I painted a man that was very distinct. He had a shaved head, dark sunglasses, and a T-shirt with a red logo on it. And I was like, this is weird. I don't usually paint guys, and especially this distinct, right? So I put it to the side. I'm like, I'm going to let it dry. This is weird. 10 minutes later, the man walks in with the same description. And I was flabbergasted. I was like, is this you? And he laughed, and we ended up becoming friends. And I gave him the painting and took a picture with him. And then that continued to happen at the coffee shop, at different places. And today, because I have so much work, some people will look at me, look at a piece and go, hey, this looks like me, or this looks like my daughter, or this, and I don't doubt for a second that it's somebody I've met. Situations, for example, I painted a, well, I didn't paint, this goes backwards, for example. So a friend of mine that I had made, I'd become friend. A friend of mine moves here from Japan or from Canada to the States, meets his other half, falls in love. They have a baby, and this is, let's say, between 2018 and 2019. And in 2019, she sends me a picture of him, her, and the baby for me to paint. So I paint for them and give it to them. So there's some details, for example, tattoos and things like that, that are very distinct again. And so but I didn't think anything of it. A few days after I had submitted the painting to them, I go into my studio and I start looking through a sketchbook. And in that sketchbook, there's a sketch 2 years prior, way before they even met. Forget about the baby being born, but it is almost a clear, distinct sketch of her giving birth. And it's got the tattoos exactly where they're supposed to be, and just insane, right? And so you start to question reality and time, and what's real and what isn't, in when you start to see those kind of things. And these are stories that I share them as anecdotal things that happen, but for me they're deeper conversations of like, uh, you know I'm not psychic. I don't think I'm psychic, or people psychics or psychics. I think that we're essentially remembering the future. Like, if I go look at my work, I might find a picture of you with headphones on and these glasses on, right? And it might be, I might have drawn it 2 years ago, but it's not because I'm psychic. It's because I'm just remembering this moment,
Oh,
right? So it's remembering the future, because everything is happening at the same time, all the time. And
that
so
is
this is just
profound.
pretty, yeah. So this is I'm on video. This is one aspect of what's going on.
You said remembering the future, and I strongly believe in intuition, and that something happens. Don't have a logical explanation for that, but somehow all these things are happen and are plausible. But what I've seen before is Sri Ravi Shankar, or somebody who has done a lot of meditation or done a lot of practices, reaches this state somehow. So, what have you done something like that, or it is a deep introspection of things or questioning? What has it been in your case?
So I've always been a proponent of magic, right? I've always wanted to, ever since I was a child, uh, I loved, if I found a pencil on the floor or a pen on the floor, I would be like, "Ooh, this thing has magical powers. Anything I paint with it will become reality." So there was always this notion of internal knowing that our actions and our thoughts and our energy could impact physical reality. This was kind of a known, internally known thing, but it was more of a childish kind of approach to it. Then, the movie like The Secret came out, and then this whole movement of manifestation and, bring, the what is that? The law of attraction
Attraction.
came out and all this stuff, right? So I dove deep, but there was something always missing in those for me, right? When you saw The Secret, it was all about, how to make a lot of money and how to, there was something missing there, because making money is difficult in some cases and it's easy in other ways. For example, I had many chances to go sell mortgages, 15 years ago when it was hot. But I was like, no, I'm a designer. I'm an artist. I'm not going to do that, even though I can sell, even though I can talk, even though I can, so manifesting in within those parameters of what they were speaking of was somewhat correct. But for me, it wasn't the whole story. And it was missing the magic element of actually being able to mess with time and space. And so a lot of reading, a lot of Deepak Chopra, and a lot of different, from the beginning to Esther Hicks, to jump to this one and learn from all of them. But again, all of them kind of, for me, missed one element of how to raise your vibration and shift your frequency. Now, I was already doing a lot of this stuff naturally. For example, raising my vibration and connecting to people was very natural when I would be at shows and at my events. For example, at John Varvatos, if you YouTube John Varvatos and Sabet, you'll see a video of the way people are responding to me drawing for them, and the way I change as well. That my smile, my physical being, I'm lighter. And this is pre the healing work, right? Pre knowing how to shift my frequency and vibration on a whim. And so what would happen is in those 2 hours, I was light, I was happy, I was joyful, I was creating a lot of love and joy for others. And they were, there was always somebody crying when I was drawing. There was always somebody tearing up or saying that they just felt the healing happen. But for me, what was happening was I was feeling great. And then when I would leave that situation, I was back to myself, right? Maybe for a day I was high, and then I was back to like the depression or the anxiety or the sadness or all the thoughts that I had in my head, worrying about what was going to happen, or this person did this to me, this person, you know what I mean? All of the things that normal human beings, the normal human suffering, right? One of the funny things is that every time I would do a show, I was so high on this vibrational energy and I didn't know it, but I would be like really hungry and lightheaded. And so I would end up at like a Del Taco or, a really cheap fast food place, and I would eat, and it felt so satisfying. It was like cosmic satisfaction. It wasn't like, oh, I'm hungry and I want to eat. It was just this like feeling of heaven taking over by eating this crappy food. And I talked to my acupuncture lady a year later, and I'm like, why is it that every time I'm doing this and then I come and eat and I feel so good? She's like, because you're grounding, because your vibration's going up, and the shitty food has a low vibration. It's grounding you because you're getting so high. And it was a very practical view of things, right? In 2015, when I actually started to paint daily, when this whole journey started, and I started to paint every day and putting my work down and sharing it with the world and all of that stuff, those 3-4 hour time slots that I would sit and dedicate to painting was the beginning of this, because it was almost as if, doing a meditation. I have a hard time sitting in quiet and just meditating, but there's a lot of times where I'm painting and there is no music and and I remember the first time that this happened, I was sitting in the middle of a coffee shop, pretty noisy, a lot of people coming around. And I'm painting this very simple piece, not simple, actually complex, layered piece, but I'm experimenting, I'm playing with different things. And all of a sudden I feel this cone-shaped vortex open up over me. And this just hum of just connection and peace and pure safety. And now I'm painting and I'm feeling completely safe. And I know that there's this magical thing happening. And then once the work was done, it was almost like disconnect. And then I was like, oh, just another piece of paper, just another painting. I remember shooting that piece right before I got into my car, share it on Instagram and Facebook. And as I get home, I look at all the responses, and everybody's like, "Wow, this piece is something different. This piece is incredible. This piece is," and you could probably Google this piece. It's called "I Love This Shit." I love this shit. Funny name for the piece, but it was very indicative of how I was feeling towards it, and that's when I knew it was, and that was the first piece that two people in the comments, whereas before people weren't buying anything, or if I put a price on it, they wouldn't even care. This piece was different. Two people are like, I want this. And I was like, okay, those are the magical words that, so it all showed the inner play of energy, frequency, vibration, connecting to source before creating or while creating. All of those things matter to me before I even understood it. I had I have a creative modality I call the hyper creative method that I used to teach people. And one of them was that you have to be source connected when you create. Without it, you're just kind of spilling your guts, right? You're not creating anything on a high vibration. So a lot of it I
Can you
internally knew.
can you tell a bit more about that process?
The hyper creative method. So
Hmm.
as a designer, as a creative, I've always been very fast. Most of it I contribute to the fact that I had a lot of anxiety. And so I didn't have a lot of time to be sitting there creating clearly and connected to source. 99% of the time, I had all this worry, right? Like this overblown worry that wasn't real. And so it made me really fast at what I did. Now, some of my friends would joke around and say, hey, if Ali can't create a logo in 5 minutes for a big company and charge a lot of money for it, it's not worth his time. And I started to question my quality. I'm like, is the quality of my work bad? No, it's great. It's top of the line. I'm understanding my client. I'm developing identities and designs that fit them. So I started to backtrack, and I deconstructed my own creative process. And what I found in it was a platform to help others get really fast and really good. And also it was a way of getting, doing work. So it was two things. Like I would teach you to, one, it was a 3-pronged process. One was heart, two was conceptual ability, and third was was technical ability. Very simple processes that most people are usually missing one or two of them, right? So conceptual ability and technical ability come second for me. The first was heart. And heart to me was just kind of an overarching name. Later on, I would realize that healing comes from the heart. It's heart activation meditations that actually help people heal, right? Whether it's yourself or others. Now, I naturally called it heart in 2005, 6, 7, whenever it was. But underneath the heart prong or pillar, you have, your psychological state. Where are you? If you have a lot of anxiety, or if you just had an argument with your wife or mother or whoever, can you compartmentalize those, or can you transcend those by being connected to source before you create? That was kind of the practice of like psychology before spirituality, or spiritual. Now I have a different thought about spirituality and psychology. I feel like if you raise your vibration, you can transcend a lot of the psychology, whereas the other way around is harder to get through the psychology and anxiety. You can never solve your anxiety or depression without years of therapy, and even then you're just kind of masking it, whereas transcending it through raising vibration is a whole other world, right? So that's kind of that prong. Then conceptual ability. How do you come up with, ideas really fast when you're designing a logo or a brand for a company? And for example, it's a toy store or a national toy store, and then you come up with, you have to find the core values of that company and then come up with different elements. And then through associative techniques of bringing the worlds together, then you realize that you've created something magical there. And then comes technical ability. Technical ability. So while you're in a state of clarity and connection, and you've come up with a bunch of concepts, and again, in the conceptual section, if you think about how many resources you're going to bring in a bunch of different ways of memorizing and learning over the course of years of creating, you're going to have a library of content to pull from to do these associative exercises, right? Like if you're doing a logo again for, a toy store that likes tigers, sells tigers, what is an animal and a tiger and I don't know, a light bulb or a clown or a jack in the box. Ooh, that's kind of cool. A tiger popping out of a jack in the box. That's a really cool identity for a toy store that focuses on tiger plush toys, so that's the conceptual ability, but that takes some practice to get to, and building up this reference guide in your head, and also knowing how to use references. It's a lot easier now. Back in the day, we would have to look at huge books of art and illustrations. And then goes the third side, which is the technical ability. How fast can you execute once you have that concept in your head? You have the tiger and the jack in the box. Maybe you're not a great illustrator. Do you have the tools to get to that? Can you pull references and create something new? Today we have AI. You can put tiger and a jack in the box, and now there's your free reference guide, right? Without infringing on anybody's work. Back then, sometimes if I couldn't illustrate something, I would have to hire an illustrator and ask him to give me 3 or 4 different concepts. And then comes to the end of it, where is knowing your tools. Well, for example, if you're using Adobe Illustrator today, a lot of us are in Procreate. But if you're in Adobe Illustrator designing logos, all you needed to know is probably about 10 to 15% of the program to be fluent in it. So program fluency, or whatever tool you have, if you're a woodworker, are you fluent with all your tools that you need? Maybe not all of it, but at least the majority of it that's important to the job. That was kind of the three basically layers of hyper creativity. Once I would teach this to a couple of you, or not teach, I would say inform some people, this is how things work. They would go away, and if they were kind of an okay designer or not a great designer, within about a week or 2, you would see like a 50-60% improvement in their design skills and abilities. And within months, they would be incredible designers, because it became kind of a platform to learn how to become fast and good. And also it's a platform to do the work. Does that make sense? Because it's a double layered kind of situation. I used to talk about that quite often. About 10, 15 years ago, I did talks and webinars with Wacom. Wacom would sponsor some of these events. And then I went back to creating my own stuff.
Do you still do this? Do you still do this, or are there videos available online where you have explained the process or how to improve in all these 3 prongs?
Yeah, I think the old videos are still online on Vimeo. If you search Wacom and Sabet Hyper Creative Method, you probably will find it. If you and then I think PhotoshopCafe.com, my friend produced a couple of videos with me teaching how to do this stuff, like for logo design and for character design. But this was all, again, it's fairly dated, but the concepts aren't and the stories aren't. So I think they're available for download on his website, Photoshop Cafe.
You said you do art daily for 3-4 hours. So how have you routinized this in your schedule? Is it in the morning, in the night, or do you take breaks within that, or is it consistent 4 hours?
As far as painting now, The past couple of years has been different. I mean, I probably paint more than 4 hours a day. I also, engage quite a bit on social media. So it's not as consistent of a 3 hours like of just quiet time. A lot of times it might be an hour or two, and then I'm doing something in between. We have a lot more distractions today than we did before, so it's kind of hard for me to just put everything away and focus on painting alone. But it is a part of something that I do consistently. And then I have multiple projects, right? So I have to do a painting because I'm inspired. Paintings are always inspired, they're never forced. Projects like, Tokyo Punks or Originals, which is a PFE project that'll be coming out. Those are more like I have to sit down and do this because this is a long-term project that needs attention and detail and all that good stuff.
What is your process? Can you take us through your process? How do you face a blank canvas?
I think when I get on a blank canvas, or now a lot of the iPad, which I've been doing for years, I start drawing some lines, loosening up, getting this, throwing some circles down, maybe using a pencil tool. A lot of times I'll even start on paper. I have my sketchbooks always around me. I even get devices that are not the iPad that are more like, I don't know if you've ever seen this guy. This is the Remarkable. It's like an iPad device, but it, it's more of what is that called? It
It
feels like,
doesn't have a backlight.
yeah, no backlight. So I get to kind of mess around in
Wow.
here, and
It's
it
like
feels
Kindle, I guess. It's like
it's
Kindle, right?
totally, yeah, it's totally like a Kindle, but it's made for drawing. So it comes with a stylus, and I'll sit here and kind of feel it and create like lines and things like that to get my mind and stuff warmed up. And then if I'm working on a painting, then I'll go into, a lot of my basics. I'll start with the face and then I'll start building around it. And then coloring comes next and then shadows and then, some highlights and we're good to go. It's almost formula. So if I really want to kind of push the boundaries on myself, then I have to take that element of like this is going to be minted or this is going to be sold or whatever out of the equation to experience myself differently. Because you can get
Hmm.
into the routines of even as an artist who's done well. Sometimes you feel pigeonholed into painting and drawing the same things as you have because then you worry if I don't do it, people aren't going to purchase it. And in most cases, you're right. They probably won't, or there'll be a smaller audience for it, right? If I go outside of my elements that people have known me for, it's going to be a harder sell. But you gotta do that for growth, or you're going to keep drawing the same thing over and over.
Wow. Those those were my couple of upcoming questions as well about doing. How important is it to find your own style, and how much time does one give for that?
Look, I'm not so concerned about learning your own style. I think what people sense in work isn't so much the style, but it's the energy and the frequency and the vibration, right? I feel like spending more time connecting and being source connected while you create and finding your energy flow and charging that surface or charging that line that you create with is more important than finding your style, right? I have multitudes of styles, but everybody can kind of tell which one's mine. And I give that more to the fact that my vibration shows up through there versus the energy that the surface is charged with shows through versus the style. Because you have an ugly kitty and then you have a beautiful face. You have the black and gold, script, but then I can also script with black ink with some other sort of paint and nobody goes, "Oh my God, this one's so much cleaner than this." Why? There's all of it has uh, an energy and a vibration frequency that people can pick up on. So
Yes.
yeah, and then confidence of line. I think confidence of line is huge. You know,
What does that mean?
confidence in your line, I feel like it means to be able to draw even one stroke and not have to second guess yourself at every single millimeter or inch or whatever, which you see some artists do as they're learning how to draw. So I feel like focusing on line, you know, when I start people on, it's like just draw circles, draw as many circles as you can, clear that anxiety, clear that fear, clear that whatever, and put, you know, start purifying it. And then once that pure energy starts to flow through you, it's a whole nother ball game. And then style shows up. Style is subject matter and all that other stuff, right? Aesthetics is important. Find, you know, when I was designing and drawing characters way back in the day, they weren't cute. I thought they were cute, but they weren't. You know, now that I look back, I'm like, wow, the proportions are off, you know. And so today I'm not so, and I've never been so technique focused. I still can't draw necessarily a full body figure if I wanted to, but I try and learn something to add a little bit more. You know, if you look at the girls I used to paint 5 years ago, they didn't even have eyelashes, or their lips were just one black line, and sometimes it could look like a mustache. But when I look back at those, the quality of the line was still there. The structure was there. It might not have any eyelashes, actually, if you look at a lot of the work early on. I didn't even know how to draw them. I had a hard time drawing the left eye versus the right eye. So there was a lot of those things that I didn't pay attention to because I was so focused on bringing the energy down. Then I'm like, maybe you should push yourself a little bit and draw the lips better. Maybe you should try this pen. Maybe you should, you know. And I resisted learning from others a lot. I really resisted, which I don't condone necessarily. I think you shouldn't resist learning how to do things better. If I had started earlier, I might have been actually painting very realistic things, and maybe my signature would have been different as well.
This is about getting those lines, and I think these are fundamentals which remain same in all the art styles. So if somebody is doing 3D or the graphics or other kind of work, how would you express that philosophy in the same way?
If they're doing 3D, a lot of 3D artists, I'm sure, are doing things through, you know, on paper first before they go. They're, you know, creating concepts and uh, things like that. So that confidence needs to come. I think if you started from there, now you're rooting your work before it goes into 3D. At least you're rooting the concept into being source connected, into the energy being flowing through. And another thing is that I've been using a Wacom tablet for 20 years, right? So for me, holding a stylus is a very natural thing because I always thought energy flows through the head, comes through, goes through my arm, and goes through the tip of this. So even if I'm moving around windows on my computer, I'd rather be doing it with a stylus than a mouse because it consistently keeps the energy flow going for me. So if you're messing in 3D, using a stylus would also help you keep that energy flow going. Whereas a mouse, I feel like, kind of has that stop, that it stops your brain, it stops your soul, kind of thing. Um, and then as you get better and better, I feel like energy just kind of embodies your whole being. So it's not about just flowing in and out anymore. It's just your whole being. So you can do anything you want. It's like kind of levels in the matrix, I feel like, that you play with.
In one of the videos, when I was doing research for you, you mentioned when you're doing the process, you don't let anybody come in between, not even you as an artist or somebody else who's commissioning the work is totally different, but even you don't let yourself come in that energies line. Can you elaborate on that? And how can one do that?
So I think if you see like early work, you know, when we start out as artists, it's all about our emotions and tearing, you know, getting your angst on canvas, which was me. 2005, there was a lot of like angst and anxiety that I had to put into canvas, and you know, some bad words and some expressions and some you know, darker stuff. And that's the reality of like who we are and our traumas and what we've gone through. um, but as you clear that up over time, again, by doing some psychological work, by getting help, by raising your vibration and frequency, by meditation, as you said, activating the heart. Those are the exercises that you do. And what ends up happening is that now there's less of this ego being on canvas that could make people feel all sorts of things. My negative, darker stuff had a lower vibrational frequency. So, you know, I my wife wouldn't even let me put some of that work in the house. You know what I mean? Because it's not going to make you feel good looking at it. And I have a caveat about that as well that I can share. But that's where I was living, right? So once that stuff cleared up, once I went to Tokyo and some healing took place, once I started painting full time and some healing took place, and then in 2019, when the activation started, where I could actually activate others in their healing journey, and myself immediately kind of cleared up. So I woke up one day and there was no anxiety, there was no fears. They're very
Wow.
minimal here and that comes and goes as a normal human being. But in general, it's like 99% clear most of the time. And once that happened, or if I'm being pulled down to a lower frequency, then I can activate myself and bring myself back up if I'm going through a harder time on this plane. And then what happens is now you're creating from source. So I don't necessarily need to get out of the way. I'm always, most of the time, out of the way. And if I get really upset and I want to put that into the painting, then there's a conscious decision to do it. It's not like I'm just every time I grab the pen, I'm expressing angst or happiness or joy or whatever. And, most of the time it's very, as Gabe Weiss says, very stoic, as the creative process. And then once you're doing it, there is this, I guess, another response to it. You're like, oh my God, this is good. This is connected. This is source. So it feeds back into me. There's times where I paint with the brush, and I'm very connected. And then I look at a video that I've videoed myself paint, and through the process of watching myself create again, I get source connected. So it becomes a gateway.
Oh.
I know in that moment I was very, very connected when I was doing that one piece, for example, which I'm always connected. So now I understand why when I used to do shows, someone might watch me paint and start crying. It's because of
Ah.
that relation, my action of me being source connected and my vibration being up at the moment allows you to connect to source through my vibrational frequency being high at the time. Then I didn't know it. Now I'm very conscious of it. So when I do draw for people, I know what's going to happen. I have an idea of
Wow.
what I'm working with.
So you're like being a channel, and whoever comes into your aura at that time also feels the same connection with their own source, or the
Yes,
source which is the same for all of us.
yes, absolutely. So I play. I'm a facilitator to a connection. So each piece essentially becomes a gateway to that source, right? And most artists who do really well stuff are naturally connected during that period. The ones who are kind of putting down their own low vibrational stuff in the work, you can tell those too. You're like, and then some people like that. I'm not saying some people love to see emotion in a piece, right? So maybe here, this is a piece I'll show you. Like this is a 2018-19 piece up here, and there's a lot going on, right? And there is a lot of me in that. There's a lot of, and somebody came and goes, wow, you must have been going through a lot over there. And, whatever the case may be, it was not maybe the most clear time for me. And because of that, someone came over the other day and goes, wow, I really connect to that. I really, because it's feeding their pain body or whatever it is. And they're connecting to it on a lower vibrational level. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's creativity on all sorts of different levels, and I choose to serve in a different way now, and not so much serve myself as much, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't really see a lot of value in bringing up and drudging up past or drudging up more vomit, to put on canvas, as one of my friends called it. He goes, enough puking on canvas in
Mm.
2005. He was actually over last night after a couple of years I hadn't seen him, but there's different levels and vibrations and frequencies that you can create from, but healing usually happens from a higher vibrational frequency. And when we're up, that's how you really activate healing in others, is by raising your frequency, and then someone else through entrainment connects to you. Which these are concepts that I learned from a book called Quantum Touch 2 by Richard
Wow.
Gordon. Very simple ideas that and again, when I was talking about all the elements of the law of attraction and everything else, missing a component, this was the component. The idea isn't to match the vibration of the house that you want. That doesn't sound like something elevated by any means, right? Or match the vibration of the car you want to drive. Imagine yourself driving the car. It's like, yeah, when I was like 20 something, that did sound interesting to me, right? 30 something. But once I learned how to raise my vibration on my own through heart activation, which I learned from Richard Gordon's book, I realized that nothing else really matters. Once you're up there, you could have no house and no cars and no whatever, and you're feeling great. It doesn't really matter. Physical reality at that point doesn't matter. So what happens is all your resistance falls away. And once all the resistance falls away, as all of these things talk about, because your vibration is high, there's no resistance to anything. All of it does naturally get attracted to you. Money has not been an issue.
Yeah, exactly. That was my next question. Can you twist the camera a bit, like lower it, so you can come again in the center of the frame? Yeah, awesome. So money is a big influencer, money and sales. So how do you not let that affect your art? Like, this is something very relevant question to many of us NFT artists here in this period of time. What do you think?
Again, there was a long time where I struggled with finances. And today I still struggle with some finances because of the way I manage them. I like to buy stuff, right? And so I will hyperextend and overextend to get the things that I wanted at the time because I felt like they were useful, not because I want to show off or whatever the case is, right? For example, back in the day, I used to buy a laptop that was $3,000, but my rent was $2,500, and all I had was $2,500. I would actually buy the laptop and go, God is great. I will create amazing things on this laptop, and I will make the money back, right? My thinking was always this, again, magical thinking of like pushing through and pushing forward. But I was putting undue stress on myself that wasn't needed, right? So those were kind of my youthful mistakes with money. Today, I'm a lot more cautious. I make sure that I can afford something if I'm going to buy it. I do my research, all of that good stuff. So there's that relationship with money that needs to kind of be shifted over time anyway. So, for example, for me, it was when I started to look at my relationship with money early on, is that I realized that in my head, I was always saying, I need to survive. Well, survival is a shitty thing, right? So it's great, but it's like, but from a self-speaking standpoint, you're manifesting and you're keeping yourself in a very low vibrational frequency. And therefore, I remember I naturally changed it to, okay, need is an illusion. I don't need anything. My food and everything else God provides somehow, some way, any way possible. And I just changed it to I thrive. Once I did that, my decision making changed naturally. My frequency changed, so did my decision making. I didn't read a whole lot of books on financials. I just decided that I wasn't going to buy that laptop when, like, I needed to pay my rent. That reduced a lot of the stress, and it reduced a lot of the anxiety towards money. So
You
that was,
mentioned you
yeah,
thrive. You mentioned the word thrive. So
right,
when
yeah.
these thoughts come into the mind, what is your self-talk, or what do you tell them?
When what comes into mind?
That thought of surviving, before it was about surviving, right? So when those thoughts came in again, what would you tell them to get into the thrive mode?
I just change it. So I realized that I need to survive this bill. I need to survive this, and I would say, no, I thrive. So I would just continuously reprogram. I thrive, I thrive, I thrive, I thrive. Just anytime the word survive would come in, I replace it with thrive in my head. And over time, that just became a normal thing. I thrive,
What
write it down, draw it.
What is the meaning of thrive?
Thriving for me, it just meant that I'm always growing and expanding and doing well. Everything's always going to work out. Everything's going to be fine. And there's going to be more and an infinite abundance of things coming. Again, goes back to that whole, frequency and vibration stuff before I knew how to do it. Right. But once you know how to do it, I feel like, again, a lot of these thought patterns and programmings get cleared up. So you might not even, if you learn how to activate your heart center and be connected to source while you're creating and all that stuff, then you'll see that a lot of these psychological NLP or neurolanguage programming, all of this stuff kind of falls on the wayside. They're great techniques, but not always necessary. So
So
there's levels of it.
when somebody's sitting for NFTs and thinking, what artwork should I create now so that it sells? Because I haven't had a sale in a long time. What would you do in that situation?
I think that, again, that comes with the energy of how you're approaching it, right? So if I do that, I go, hey, okay, I've done a couple of skulls, I've done a couple of girls, what's next? And if I do it forcefully because I want to sell, if I do it with that frequency, which I'll fall into that same issue too. The sales fall short, it won't go anywhere. Maybe I'll sell a couple that people think it's cool. I thought maybe visually it was cool, but the concept wasn't heartfelt. It wasn't inspired. It wasn't in spirit. So I feel like get into spirit, connect to source, make sure that what you're doing is in line with what you want to create, and then come up with the program and idea of how to sell it and make it exciting for people to buy. Right. So just creating for the sake of, I'm going to create this so it can sell is just, it's a wrong approach from my perspective. It's my opinion. Again, when I say wrong, I want to be clear that it's just from my perspective. I think there's better ways of doing that. So, but what you see is a lot of people, again, suffering from not having enough money to do things. And I've been there a year and a half ago, during the pandemic, I had a hard time paying my rent, right? So, but once again, I connected to source and I was like, I raised my vibration, all of a sudden everything will work out. I don't need to worry. And things just kind of, all of a sudden the government messaged, hey, we want to lend you some money. Yeah, I'll take that money. And then you're open, and then, a family member goes, hey, there's this opportunity. Would you like to take it? Yes, of course. And things start to open up that way. But as long as you're closed and scared and fearful, and why isn't my stuff selling? And why isn't this happening? Then what ends up happening is that you get more of the same, right? So again, I find, if I don't sleep enough, I can be at a lower vibrational frequency in the morning, and I don't want to get out of bed, and fear takes over, and worry takes over, and a lot of that kind of stuff can get in the way as well. I haven't sold anything for a few days. What am I going to do? Is it over? I remember when I was doing logos and websites, once a project was done and I was paid for it, my biggest fear was I'm never going to work again, because I had nothing in the pipeline and nobody had called. And my dad one time asked me, he goes, what's the difference for you between a good month and a bad month financially? And I told him the difference is one good day. You give me one clear day, and I didn't know again that one clear day meant one day without worry and anxiety and all that stuff. But if I had a joyful day, the entire universe would just align. The phone call would come in, the project would start immediately, the deposit would be in my hands by the next day. I mean, it was insane. So I just didn't know how I was doing it. There's, I think that's the difference. Most people are like, I can't just think positively and things. It's not about thinking positively. Thinking positively can get you so far. I can be in a high, frequency and have negative thoughts. whatever, it doesn't matter. My frequency and vibration is open and connected, and I can deal with that negative thought once it happens.
So talking about negative thoughts, there are a couple of more like envy or jealousy. Like they are having so much sales, I am not having a comparison or uh, how when these thoughts flooding in, when they take your energy down, what would you do in that situation?
Um, those are natural. I think those are natural feelings that are going to come. They're emotions, right? So you just have to learn how to, again, same thing, by sitting quietly, activating your heart, connecting to your source. You understand that this is an emotion that's going to flow through you, right? And it's a feeling that you're going to have, and it comes in one ear and it goes out the other. Same thing with good stuff. When people praise you, this is amazing, you're so great, you're the best, you've done amazing, you've sold so many, you know all of that stuff. Same thing comes through. Thank you. And then you let it out, because either one of those gets you, and you can either go on your high horse and think you're something that you're not, and then tomorrow, once the sales do stop, you're going to have a really hard time, right? Um, for us, we had, some of us and friends that were doing really well during last year, but when it stopped, or a sales stopped, or it slowed down, it was really difficult. It was still difficult for us to handle as well, because you go from this skyrocket to like almost nothing when like the apes showed up, for example. But as soon as you connect and you come to your center, then you're like, this is an opportunity. For example, when the apes happened, a lot of the sales for artists stopped completely. And there was no understanding of why it was happening. We didn't get it. I didn't understand why people were acting like apes in clubhouse rooms, for example. And I bought a couple of apes at the time, and I didn't know what I was going to do with them. But then I was like, you know what? Let me try. Let's see if this is fun. And then the next thing you know, by being connected to it and really learning more about the community and getting to know and making friends in that community, and I'm like, oh, now, then there was a vision of like, I can blend my apes, I can create my apes and take my apes and put them into my art. Once I had respect for the community and the art and whatever was created around it, then I was able to create these really wonderful, um, what is that called? Like my derivative.
Derivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of derivatives, and I did fairly well with derivatives. Today, those are probably the one of the most seeked pieces in my collections.
Wow. So now the works are ready. What are your tips on how to sell artwork as a one-of-one artist?
Well, the first thing, 101 artist, what does that mean? I know that people throw that around a lot. What does that mean to you?
What it means for me is somebody who is creating work without a team, or it is not a business that okay 10,000 are going to be minted and it has these utilities and stuff and so on and so on. It's not
Okay.
that. One of one is more like a person who is creating the art for art's sake and putting it out, um, on those lines.
Okay. So I call them artists. I mean, it's, no team, just artists. And as an artist, one thing you got to figure out and realize is that you are a business, right? You have to operate somewhat as a business. And what that means is that you need to focus on three things at least that are out there other than your beautiful work. I always talk about this in clubhouse rooms or spaces, and you'll hear me talk about you know, having and building an audience different from your community, because they can become a part of your community, but the audience is way bigger than a smaller community that you actually can touch and talk to and connect to. Those things, me and you might create, you're a part of my community. We're having a conversation. We've become friends. That's different than the person that just falls in love with your work and is 7 steps removed from you and is sharing it with their community. So there's these pockets of communities that form around your work, and that's a whole different, so that becomes an audience, right? There's pockets of communities in those audiences. And growing that audience is important through sharing, through daily, interaction with people, and giving people something to share with their friends, which means educating them on your art and technique and how you do it and why you do it and all of the other stuff in between. That helps grow that audience base. You can also create the community in the center of it for yourself around you. That can also help you because they become resourceful. If I need something to be shared, I can hit you up and say, hey, I want to talk about this on your podcast. What do you think? And if you find it to be good, because we have this relationship, then you might be more apt to allow me to speak. So those are important. So building those relationships as a community is important. These two things take time, but you do it daily. For me, it's been daily for ever since I think 2007 when Facebook opened up. I've been doing this since then, and I've like nonstop, right? I've never stopped a day ever since then. You can go back on my Facebook and scroll down almost 13, 14, 15 years, and you'll see what I was sharing back then. It's a lot different. I had my own social network, and I had built an artist social network back then called Moji Zoo, and I was sharing a lot about that, and then it was about my characters then, and you can see my growth. So I had no issue growing in front of people, right? I'd put the bad art, I'd put the good art, it didn't matter. I was just sharing. So that was a decision I made early on to grow in front of people. And that helped building an audience for the past 20 years. Now, it also teaches you how to build an audience. So when I came into the NFT world, I didn't have an audience here. Everything you see is from scratch. Everything you see is not coming from anywhere else. But my background of being able to build that much and having content and paintings and everything else ready allowed me to put it out there on a much higher speed than most people. And then also having a background in design helps because I can build my own, material or film myself or do a lot of stuff that I still do. I don't have a team doing a lot of this stuff for me. It's everything you see for the most part, it's me. So getting good at that is important. Then comes building programs or marketing campaigns around each one of your drops, whether it's one painting or it's a collection of 20. There has to be some sort of release date or email campaign or something that makes it exciting for people to want to connect that, or building a story about that piece, explaining why it's important to you, how it's important to you, and why you came up with it, and why people should care. Those are all important things. Adding value to the piece before, more than how much you're asking for it. For example, if you buy my NFTs, I'm doing free print rights. So you can go ahead and I encourage people do print your work anyway when they have the NFT, but I'm actually encouraging it and verbally saying it that I am legally and I'm giving consent from the bottom of my heart that I want you to print this thing as big as you want in your house. Because I think that the energy and the frequency and the vibration of that piece will change once you have that artist's consent. Whereas at the beginning, I was like, what? People are printing my NFTs? That's how I make my living, through prints. This is weird. And for me to understand the psychology of the collector and how grateful the collectors are when they collect your piece, I was like, that's the least I could do. Give them the rights to print. So that becomes a part of your program, right? That becomes a part of how you approach the sales. And so having those three things always working together is important. And then not getting disappointed or sad or just completely, devastated when something doesn't work. I used to do these programs when I was selling prints, and I would have a flash sale almost every 3 months. Every quarter, there would be a flash sale, and I would sell 170 paintings. And it was hard work, a lot of packaging, a lot of boxing, a lot of internet stuff, marketing. And then I would repeat it one too many times. Or I would make a mistake. I would go, okay, so right now the program is 5 paintings a day, but there's only one of each available. They're one-on-ones. I'm going to do 2 of 2s tomorrow, the next sale. And what you would see is instead of a 30-day sellout, by day 10, people are done because everybody had a chance to get it. Now, this isn't about FOMO. It's about excitement and having a positive tension with your collectors. And if you kind of, that sweet spot of tension to play with is gone, now the sale stops. And then you go, oh, that was, that's done. It doesn't mean you're done. It means that you see where you made your mistakes. Okay, I shouldn't have offered two. That might even come out, maybe that was my greed that I thought that I could sell two of each. It was really cool to sell one of each. And I'm going to go back to that. But let's make it a shorter time span. Maybe I'll have 10 one-on-ones a day, but only for 10 days. So I modify the plan, the game, to see what works, what's the sweet spot. And these are on a business level, again, as artists, these are very small, like programmatically or marketing wise, these are very small things that we're doing, versus the people who have a lot of money. They've been playing with us with things like this for hundreds of years, right? How many, I don't know, where do you live, by the way?
In India.
You're in India. I don't know the brands in India that probably market to you to buy their clothes and everything else, but here, Banana Republic, which I haven't shopped from for 10 years, will send me a 25% off coupon almost every other day. It seems like Jonathan Adler.
Spamming.
They're spamming me every day. They send me, 25. It's always 25% off. The stuff is $5,000 for a couch, but it's always 25% off somehow. But they changed the name of the sale, and then they put a gap in between it for you to feel like it's never going to happen again. And then boom, it's 25%. You're like, I better jump on it. I need that $5,000 couch because one, it might sell out. Two, I might not see 25% ever again. It's a great deal, great opportunity. With art, it's different because with art, you have an audience that's into your stuff, like genuinely loves your work, loves who you are, all of those things. And then you're playing with them, right? You're giving them something to expect and to have fun with. If they don't want to participate, they won't. But it's not about FOMO. FOMO, yes, the bigger corporations and all that stuff, it's very calculated to create this fear of missing out. But for you to engage your customers and collectors in a fun way is actually, I feel like it's encouraged. And building a mailing list that people want to be a part of is important. Now, I communicate with my email list quite often, and it's usually to share them with the newest piece that I'm dropping. And some might go, will he ever stop spamming us? Well, you signed up for my email. You don't have to be on it if you don't want to see my newest work. Just unsubscribe. It's okay. Because I'm not going to stop from sharing with the ones who want to hear it and who want to see it. So those are kind of the balances that I don't have a lot of stop gaps and limits to how I interact with my people. And so I feel like I'm reaching more people more often. And I'm not ashamed of tweeting the same piece 17 times in a day because I know that I'm being blocked by Twitter. Not too many people are going to see that one piece. So I'm a little bit more overzealous than most people, but it's just in my nature to want to share consistently and constantly. And it works.
Wow. Those were brilliant, amazing tips. Thank you for that. About in marketing, there's another P, that is pricing. So what do you think about how to price the works?
Oh, pricing? I think pricing comes with multitudes of layers. You have the market going on, right? I value my work at a certain level on each piece that I paint. I have pretty much a set price, not price, but set amount that I would like a piece to earn. Let's say that's for ETH, right? And there's nothing wrong with valuing your work with money. That's what we're doing here as well to try to make a living doing what we love. So as long as you can compartmentalize, I created this, now I need to sell it. One of the things that I did with my physical work was that to detach the emotion from pricing is that I made it more mathematical. So I said, okay, from now on, and I learned it from, I think, a gallery at an art show. When I asked about a famous artworks that I saw, I go, how much is that? And they go, oh, well, he's about $2,000 a square foot. I was like,
Square foot.
a square foot. And I was like, I like that. I'm going to do that from now on. So right now, if you want a physical painting like that one, it's per square foot. And then if you want a physical painting on paper, it's per square inch. So, for example, a small piece is $50 a square inch. It's a lot easier to be emotionally detached from the piece once you price it in a way where it's emotionally detached. And two, if you feel like you look at a piece and you're like, that's $1 million piece, then you shouldn't even try to sell it. Just keep it for yourself. Maybe make prints, right? That's the beauty of NFTs. If I have a piece, for example, that I feel like I look at it differently. I look at a piece and I go, this was a very special piece to me. And I think it deserves more, maybe not $1 million, but maybe it's 10 ETH instead of 4 ETH. I'll make it a 101 and I'll put it there as 10 ETH. And I'm okay with it not selling until it gets that 10 ETH because I feel like it's a part of history and I want someone to own it. The other works that I put out there, and I feel like it has more of a mass appeal. I think everybody would love this work. And why should I make it only a 101? I'm going to make an edition. But if I'm going to make an edition of 10 to earn the 4 ETH that I want, I make it 0.4. Now, some people will go, hey, you're dropping your prices. Weren't you selling something for 4 ETH the other day? Yeah, but it's an
It's
edition of
10.
it still earns 4 ETH. Today, I'm doing editions of 250 at 0.06, right? And still earns the same, maybe a little bit more, right? Once it has, and if it hits that 4 ETH, you might see me burn the rest of them to create value for the people who collect it. So for me, it's a matter of like, did that piece earn what it deserved and what I deemed it deserved? And so I changed my pricing based on how many I can. And then you have to check the market as well. Do you have the audience that can support purchasing, an edition of 250 or 100 or 50 or 10, 5? Some people have a hard time. But you start, for people who are coming in, I typically get them to start with editions of 5 at like 0.05. And what happens is once those sell out fairly quickly because you're building your audience, what you see is that you create a momentum that helps your next sale and your next sale and your next sale. But if you come out with a 101 at 1 ETH and you've never sold anything, I wouldn't expect it to go anywhere. The more people own your
Wow.
work, the more people you have that educate others about your work.
One more follow-up question. If you have priced it,
You just cut
as
off.
1 of 1, and it is taking time to sell, so will you not
Tanmay,
mint new NFTs till that one sells, or do you keep your minting process on?
I lost you for a minute. You're having bad connection. What was the question?
You have put a work out in the NFTs in the market. It is priced at a particular price, but it is not selling. It is a long time it hasn't sold. So, do you stop your minting process till the previous work has sold, or your minting keeps going on no matter the sales?
Minting keeps going on because maybe that piece didn't connect with people. Maybe that piece wasn't the best work I'd put out. Maybe I was mistaken and overestimated how people were going to like that one. Maybe I don't have the audience that could have supported that style right now or that direction. Um, maybe I didn't do enough marketing for that piece and I can come back to it, right? But if I've sold, like, let's say 10 of an edition of 20, now I'm looking at a situation where it might be kind of you know, um, where I have to maybe shift my thinking on that piece, right? And then what I end up doing is I'll either, if I've sold like 10 of them, I might burn the rest. I might actually archive the rest. And then if someone really wants that piece and they come back to me, they go, hey, I want it. I might even offer it back to them at the same original price because now it's being discovered. Creative work doesn't go wasted. It's not something that, it just might be the wrong timing and it might be the wrong vibration. Maybe you were in a bad mood when you minted that one. But once you change your mood, once you elevate yourself again, once the energy and the frequency and vibration come up, guess what happens to all your work? The frequency of all of that stuff is connected to you. So it changes. So imagine thinking about the work that I did in 2005, that was low frequency, low vibrational stuff that, people didn't want to see on their walls. Today, everybody wants to see that stuff on the walls. Not because of the fact that I've done better now, but it's because I'm different and I'm source connected to all of my work. So they even feel different to me when I look at them. I don't look at them and go, oh my God, there's so much sadness in this piece. I don't look at that and go, oh, there was so much I was going through, my vibrational frequency has shifted. And that's why people connect to that too.
I heard one of the collectors say that if an artist has many unsold pieces, there's something wrong with that. So have you ever been bothered with that thought of one collector thinking something like that?
I've been part of a lot of things collectors have thought, whether I was minting too much for them. And, this is early stuff when people, when the audience that I had was mostly concerned about flipping and making money on my work right away. Whereas today I have a more sophisticated collector base that understands that I create for the love of creating. And I put it out there, my soul every day for people to purchase and to love and to connect and to print and to whatever. And it's about the art, rather than the flips. So those type of collectors tend to kind of fall off and they'll say a couple of things. They're like, don't you care about your collectors? You keep minting. Well, it's like, you want me to stop breathing too? You know what I mean? So for me, those kind of sentiments don't go far, right? If they think that there's something wrong because I have 10 pieces unsold sitting on the blockchain, and so be it. Am I going to stop what I do for a living? No. I don't get
Beautiful.
it. But, again, this all doesn't mean that I don't manage my my outflow. If times are slow, I might, most people might cut everything. I go the opposite direction maybe because I'm like, I'll go lower price, high volume. Let's see how that does. I experiment with my outflow. If nothing is moving, maybe I go back to experimenting with a 101. Or maybe it's not about me right now. Like, for example, the past couple of months hasn't been about my own work. I spent more about collaborating with the entire world. And that's been really fun. It's just a matter of what's going on,
I have set of questions related to collaboration. But before then, about collectors, should the artist go and search for collectors depending on the artist art type based on what collector has purchased before, or just wait and watch till the collector finds, or is there a third way?
I think the best way to do it is build your audience by creating, communicating, sharing, interacting with as many people as possible, with your peers, with your friends, getting on spaces. And if you can't get on top to talk to in spaces, start your own spaces with your own friends and have that be, share each other's work, connect. And the more people see your work and connect to your work, the right people will start to want to collect it. So it's more about, I feel like, sharing with as many people as possible and expanding that net than it is about like DMing this collector or DMing this one. Hey, what do you think of this? You're already putting yourself at a lower position with that approach. Bring your confidence, believe in your work, continue to do what you do, and then share it with the world. And people will be grateful for you sharing yourself. It's different.
Yeah, doing that DMing to collector also feels very low energy. In the heart, it doesn't feel all right.
Right? It's
To
lower
do.
frequency stuff. They can feel it. You know, when you create and when you share from a place of joy, when you bring joy to the process, then everything else flows. But it does take a certain level. Again, the hard part is I'm broke, I don't have money, I haven't sold anything. How do you expect me to be happy and joyful? It's like I haven't paid my rent for a month. And dude, all of this stuff I've been through. It's not something that I haven't been through for decades. I've had ups and downs that have been really horrible. You know, whether it was like the electricity being shut off because I hadn't paid the bill or whatever else that could have happened. Um, I didn't understand this one thing where, you know, about frequency and vibration was you gotta feel good first. You gotta feel God first. You gotta feel source connected first before you can see all of this stuff happen. Right. So um, your daily practice maybe is opening it up with a meditation and being source connected and calm before you approach the day. And if you can't do that, then you got to find something that does it. For me, it was 3-4 hours of painting a day. And I didn't have the luxury of doing that at the time. I wasn't making any money other than design work. So for me, during the day, I dedicated to painting. And at night, I would go home and design for my clients to still pay the bills. So that morning, night routine was very key into being able to still do it. I didn't just go, ooh, I'm high vibrational and I'm connected, and now I don't need to do anything other than painting and God will provide. No, I continued to design at night and stayed, you know, grounded to be able to do the work that I needed to pay the bills. But at the same time, I dedicated the extra time to do the art.
Wow. I do that, I have been doing, and you know what? All the philosophical, spiritual thoughts you said are they take me back to they're so similar. I think the knowledge and the truth at all, like, we reach to the same goal no matter what path you take. So I've
Yeah,
been reading different things and I resonate with you so much. It's the same. It's like I'm hearing the same things again from you.
good.
So it's
I'm glad. Yeah, I just don't
so
like people getting discouraged, you know. The question about like seeing other people do well, you should always be grateful when they do well. When, you know, I told Gabe when he was doing Stoics, which has been a phenomenal success, and he's like, you know, there's always been this joking, playful rivalry we have with each other on things, but it's a lot of fun. But in all honesty, I told him, I said, your success in this project, because it's so art focused, because it's your beautiful art that you do every day, your success in this means success for the entire space. So don't mess up. No, I'm just kidding. But the fact was that we needed him to do well in a bear market and to bring his joy and love into it. And he did. Even though he ran into a bunch of challenges for a couple of days, he was able to rise above it and sell out this beautiful project that he continues to be a part of and do amazing things with. So Stoics was incredible. And for me
what
as an
is
artist, huh?
what is Gabe's Twitter handle?
Gabe Weiss, I think Gabriel J. Weiss. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can find him. I follow him. You can probably just search him in my
Mhm.
things. He's incredible. So seeing our friends do well, we should be grateful because it's a sign of that there is enough for everyone and that this space is going to thrive and it's going to do well. So I enjoy seeing others do well. And then I might get a little tinge of, it's time for me to do it again, you know? And, you know, so you get that. That's that human playfulness that you have to have with you. The other thing is that there's a book called The Science of Getting Rich. It's an old book by I think Wallace D. Waddles or something like that. And one of his things, it's a very early rendition of Law of Attraction. The book is almost 200 years old. And
Oh.
Yeah, one of the things he says is that there's two ways of doing business. One is the creative way. Two is the competitive way. When you compete, it's very low vibrational and old school, right? There's so many people in this world that are going to compete with my art, and how am I going to get seen with this sea of people that are out there doing things? His work is so much better than mine, or mine is better. Why isn't it doing as good? Those are competitive thoughts. Whereas creative thought goes, I'm going to create my own path, my own lane. I'm going to have my own audience and my own community of collectors that love my work. And I'm going to do me, and people are going to be attracted to that because I'm going to do it from a place of love and connection and heart. So that's the approach that I'd like to take always. Versus, because competitive, as soon as you get into that competitive mind state, I get paralyzed. I'm paralyzed. There's nothing I can do. There's so much. Another thing that the sales when I was selling on Instagram and Facebook and my flash sales showed me was that if I was to sell 150, 160 paintings in a month, which I did, and my audience on my Instagram might have been like 15,000 at the time in 2015, 16 when I started this. I realized that when I look back, there was only about 20 to 25 people that made that sale successful. There was a couple that just bought one. There was a couple that bought two. There was a couple that bought three. And then there was about 20 people that bought five each.
Oh.
That's 150. There you go. Right? I'm guesstimating, but you get what I'm saying? So I realized as an artist, I didn't need to be famous or well known by the entire world to make a living. I sold 150 paintings and made like $30,000 from $50 all the way to $200 paintings, but it adds up. And that's a living. Doing what I love, genuinely bringing love to the table. And then now I have 25 people who love the work, who are going to put it up on their walls or in their wallets and their displays now. And then from there, they're going to tell their friends about me. And then that love circle continues. There's no competition there. There's no competitive thought there. There's creativity, creative path, and love.
As you're saying this, there's only one thought going in my mind. Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go. That's all love, man.
Yeah, you just increased my energy. Thank you for that. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So, one question before the collaboration question. How to make the best use of bear markets like this?
This is the time to do a couple of things. One, I feel like it's a time to grow your inner community of support, having a lot of people around you to support each other while you go through this path. It's also a time to get creative, which leads us to the collaborations, right? And it leads us to also build. I have really big ideas that I launched 15 years ago that were 15 years too early, essentially being what NFTs are today. I had launched 15 years ago. This is the time to contemplate and see if I want to bring those back. On top of working on gifting the community, working on, what I'm doing with the originals, working on coming up with the next iteration of Tokyo Punks, which I've already started teasing and showing and sharing. Those are kind of the things. And then collaborating with friends and family and whoever else is in the space that wants to come in, just so you can start to intermingle with each other's audience and communities on the most genuine, like loving way possible. Once these things come from the place of love versus the place of like need or desire, then you're in a much better place.
Wow. Let's talk about collaboration. You are like the master of collaborations. I am looking forward to do the Kiku Travels the World. I have saved it. I'm trying to get a 3D version of it. So, yeah. How do you do that? I mean, you bring so much energy and joy to the whole community, and with your open arms and for collaborations, and your spontaneous and innovative methods to collaborate. Tell us more.
So I think Kiku, being inspired to do things is definitely the first thing. Like I have to be inspired to do that. And then I also have to challenge my own fears, right? What happens if I put out one of my characters and everybody starts using it? Some people might use it in a bad way, or and then those were kind of the questions that would go through your mind initially. But once it's inspired, that activated that thought comes into play. And the way it started was I had Kiku in my iPad. I had drawn a single character, which is usually not the case. Usually it's a whole world of characters underneath a name and a package and a logo and everything else. I would copy and paste Kiku into different paintings that I had. I'm like, does she belong here? No. Does she belong here? No. And then I'm like, maybe she belongs in an AI world. So I just put in Kiku's world and all these beautiful little backgrounds came and I minted it. And I'm like, well, that was fun. That was easy. Everybody can do that. I'm going to open it up. And I wrote the entire program, and it's a program, right? I wrote the program on a tweet and put it out there, not knowing what was going to happen. The first one came within minutes. Somebody already had something done. Then another one, then another one. And then I think we've done over 100 artists, I want to say, at least 100 artists. I think over maybe 1,000 pieces have been sold.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I know that is because I promised to whoever buys 10 different artists' work, I would give them a 101 Kiku piece that I would create. And I've probably given away about 50 101s that are so that means that 500 pieces there have been claimed by 50 different people. I've had my collectors create Kiku pieces. Now they're selling and they're becoming artists, which is incredible. So it was something that was an experiment, a question, and then executed without much thought after that. Because if I sit there and try to architect it way too long, it might come out too rigid and too, it's not as organic and as loving as it is. I had a harder time letting go of allowing and opening up my own portrait work, which is my signature essentially, which is the feminine energy pieces. And I decided to jump over that hoop a couple of nights ago as well with Stargirl. So I put out a new piece, which is my pin tweet today or yesterday. And you
I
can see
saw
that
it.
people are just so beautiful, like the things that they're doing with it, so respectful, so kind. And I think they've already sold 20 or 30 NFTs in the past couple of days. Now, this is the focus on them. And my sales aren't that great right now. They're kind of slower right now, but it's okay. It's right now is again time for collaboration and building what the future is going to hold. And it does have its positive things for me as well. Now we have 100 different artists sharing my work with the world as well through their worlds, right? And what
You're reaching
other,
many more different audiences that you might have not
yeah,
reached in the traditional way.
exactly. You got 200 artists talking about my work within their world, which is the biggest compliment, right? Because they love the work so much that they're willing to attach their name to it, which is a huge honor for me. Whether you have 5,000 followers, one follower, or you're a collector, all of it is so meaningful and deep for me. And not one disrespectful post, not one inappropriate painting or anything else that I would have been like, what did I do? I made a mistake. No, none of that. It's just been pure joy. And I'll do it again.
Wow.
This will be something that I think will be a part of the open collabs will be a part of my ethos.
So the Kiku one and the current portrait one, do they have a deadline or end of that collab, or are they ongoing?
Ongoing forever. There's no reason
Okay.
to
Okay.
why close it, This is an open collab to its fullest meaning. mint as many as you like, as often as you like, at any prices you like, you know, and you're good to go. Just follow the instructions.
Amazing. So it's time. Okay, one last question, and then we'll head to seeing your artworks and talking about them.
Okay.
How to succeed as an artist?
How,
Open-ended question.
what is
How
it?
to how to succeed as an artist?
I think, as we've talked about it from the beginning, this whole conversation is really about how to succeed as an artist. Is first to succeed being a human being. It's got to permeate your day to day life. You can't wake up and you know have an argument with your friend or be pissed off at some email you read. You got to be in a state of joy and calm. From the beginning and the get-go, and then let that permeate into your art, and then do the steps that we talked about, sharing and creating programs and educating and all of the other stuff that goes along with it. So your art is your entire life. Like, it's how you live and breathe day to day, all of it.
Wow. You did an exhibition for NFT NYC, giving a platform to so many artists. What inspired you to do that?
I think this was the second one. The first one was last year. Stratosphere one was something that I discussed with a partner in China. We developed Stratosphere on a call together to bring the first in real life, big world's biggest NFT art showcase in real life in China. And as I was driving, I was like, well, it's good. Chinese people will get to see this work on this big screen. But what about the rest of the world? What about, we're in the NFT world now. How do we do this? And I remember pulling aside. I was in the car driving and calling up Jake, the community director at Spatial. And I said, will you partner up with us and build this also in the metaverse for us? And his answer was quickly yes. And we were off and running to building Stratosphere, which was the biggest art showcase in the world for NFT artists last year. Showed, I think, 600 artists, both in the physical realm. We rented 500 screens. The show was incredible, including one huge one. And the physical show was seen by the best of the best people in the world that flew in to see it. There was some of the biggest auction houses, and there was opportunities that were free for the artists. The idea was to do a showcase that there was no curation, there was no gatekeeping, there was nobody standing in front saying, oh, your art isn't good enough, or you're not, we need more this and we don't need this. And, there was none of that. So my idea was to have, again, just as everything else I do, as open as possible. It becomes a little bit more difficult because, you do get a lot of people wanting to be in there. And then you have that challenge of, is everybody going to get seen? But it didn't seem to matter. The more people came, the better it was, and people got to share each other's work and the house. So this year we decided to do Stratosphere 2022, and instead of going to China, we brought it to NFT NYC, which was a little bit more visibility for us in America. Spatial was our partner. Samsung was also our partner in showcasing, and so was um, God, I'm forgetting the third one. We had another partner that did a showcase at their headquarters. Um, I'm spacing out right now, but I'll mention it later to you. Uh, Matic, Matic Studios. There you go.
Polygon.
Polygon Studios. Yeah. So we had a show at Polygon Studios. I had a signing there. Me, Gabe, and a few other people spoke on stage, and then we had everybody's art on VR glasses there. And then at Samsung, we had everything. We had displays. We had the 50-foot display. We had a talk on stage, and I had a signing for about 8 hours. I was drawing for people. So it brings a lot of attention to everyone. It allows me to share so many, because I am, whether I like it or not, I have this tendency. I love artists and I want to share them with the world. I started the second social network in the world for artists 15, 18 years ago called Mojizu, um, because I also wanted to be seen. Like, it wasn't just all for everybody else. I had this desire 18 years ago to be seen. But what ends up happening is that there's so many better artists out there, so many more amazing people out there that need to be seen, that they take the center stage when it comes to these shows. And I'll continue to do it, and our partners are amazing. Spatial is amazing. Samsung has been amazing. Yeah, so, and Neo Digital Gallery, which helped us with the first one, was incredible, which was the Chinese partners. And I'll continue to do it. This year we showed 800 artists, and
Wow.
we're going to break 1,000 next year.
Definitely, it's going to go more than that. I plan to do it for NFT London as well.
NFT London, I'm not going. Are you going?
Yeah. I'll be a speaker there. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so
I
cool.
mean, I've been
Well,
looking forward to it. Then
share the
I'll be
video.
host. Yeah, definitely. I'll be hosting meetup in London and then meetups in Paris and then Berlin also. So
So,
looking forward to meet
like,
all the NFT fam in real life and also try to reach more artists to bring them to this new opportunities here.
yeah, that's wonderful, man. I appreciate you. That's going to be great. I can't wait to see what you do.
Absolutely. There's another thing which we have been doing, as you said about doing things within ourselves, helping each other. I host 12 hours weekly spaces. So the from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. India time, we have the spaces on Saturdays where we get people from all time zones. That's the advantage of having 12 hours. People showcase, and it's so much fun to see their stories, see their artworks, and it just feels much more like at a higher vibration stage while doing that as compared to DMing somebody. Okay, check this out.
Yeah, it's not fun. Yeah, that stuff doesn't work. I think really the spaces and the advent of Clubhouse and the technology that became, these voice apps have been wonderful for people. It has been life changing on so many different levels, and I can see it how it is high vibrational. I think when we started last year, there was I was on Clubhouse rooms for like 10, 15 hours a day, and the day would pass by quickly, and it was incredible. That energy. I remember looking at the sky, and it was like stars in my room. I see stars. Like, I didn't want to go to sleep. It was incredible.
You mentioned about this because event. I have been a bit experienced in events. It takes a lot of money also, right, to host and get the screens and advertise for it. So, how do you organize that?
With the first one, I think the show cost $2 million.
2 million. Oh my god.
I mean, imagine just renting 500 screens. Even if you paid, I don't know, $300 a piece to bring it in and install it, deinstall and take it. That's quite a bit of money. And we had a 5,000 square meter gallery, and then invites and all that stuff. I've been blessed to have good partners that are willing to take on those parts from me.
Sorry.
I've been blessed to have good partners to do those parts, whether it's to fund it or make Stratosphere part of that. Like Samsung and Spatial were already doing a few events at the place, and we were blessed to be a part of that at Stratosphere. Now, next year, I feel like we've gotten to a point where people recognize Stratosphere and they come for Stratosphere more than some of the other events that are happening at those locations. So I feel like we're going to get more of a spearheaded approach, and we even get more sponsorship and help.
Amazing. I'll definitely be there if I get the visa.
I hope you do.
uh, all right. So it's time to see your artworks, my friend. I'm pulling up some. Do you have any specific that you want to discuss or
No, I'm
just
okay.
any?
Yeah.
So it is So colorful. This one was a little dark and different, so I thought of choosing this. So here we go. Do you see?
Oh yeah, Inception.
Hmm. There's so much going on in here. Can you tell a bit what's happening in this?
This one, this is more of my free flow kind of pieces where I get to use some brushes that aren't so perfect and clean. Um, it's just an expression. I had this playful skull in the middle that is kind of a play off of the Pixel Pop logo, and then the rest is just what flows, man. And I just keep adding layers and layers. These kind of typically these works, and like I told you about, I love this shit. And if you want to pull that up, that's an early work. If you Google it, you might be able to find it if you have found
I
it.
love this shit. I googled it. This is what
The
came
first
up
one,
with.
the first one on the left.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just see it
This is
here.
loading. Or maybe if you click it, it might blow up. There you go. So this was an early first time where, again, that was the one that I told you I was very connected. The love vortex opened up.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, oh, okay, another piece. But people found it to be very powerful. And again, it was hard for me to understand because most of my work was very clean and simple and all that stuff, one line work. But here I was experimenting with a lot of pens, inks, watercolors, and it's a 13-inch by 15-inch painting. And
Wow.
after this happened, and I realized layers are important. Even if you don't see the layers, people feel the vibration and frequency of those layers. So the more you input into a piece, the more information that's put into these lines, through expressing, the more depth it has, even if you don't see it. And so when you see a piece like Inception, there's a lot of layers. There's probably layers underneath there that you'll never see. Maybe if you see the process video of it being created, you'll see it, but not necessarily here. And that's just a span of time of experimenting with different material, different paintbrushes, different tips. And you see the base of it was started around 2015 when I started to layer things and work on things a little bit more, in depth and putting more time. The more I spend on a piece, the more energy builds into that piece. So they become, again, energy portals for me. And this was my first experience. And so when you look at a piece like Inception, it finds its roots in the piece called I Love This Shit. I have probably printed this 100 times, sometimes at sizes that are very, very big, all the way to this size.
How much time did you take for this piece?
This piece was probably like a 3 to 5 hour piece. Not crazy high, but I remember I was sitting there in the coffee shop probably for about 3.5 hours.
So, have you made any piece that okay, you have made it in a day and just put it away and come back after a few months and work again, and then come back again after a couple of days? Has there a piece been like that? Have you done a piece like
Yeah,
that?
typically if I get on a piece of paper, physical work, I like to finish that in that sitting. If it's a bigger physical work, yeah, I've had to do layers and layers over time. It just depends on the size I'm working on. So if I'm working on a smaller piece like this, it could end. Digitally, you can go through that process a little bit faster. But there is times like the skull I had started a while back on Inception, and then I came back to it a few times later. And originally, I didn't know what I was going to do with it till later. And then
There's a
this,
skull in a skull.
yeah,
There are a lot of other, so many elements and faces in this.
yeah. And sometimes I look back at a piece like this, and I'm like, from a design standpoint, I could have made that skull stand out more. I could have subdued the surrounding a little bit more. So I do think of different ways I could have made it better, but at the same time, if someone spends time and sees the aspects that relate in this piece, then they can see all of it at the same time as well. So
Hmm. Just one quick question for tip. These are physical works, right? How do you scan them or how do you digitize them?
this is actually a digital piece. This was created in Procreate.
Oh, and what about this one?
This one is a physical piece captured by a high resolution camera, like a Fujifilm X2 or something like that. So I
Hmm.
try to get good lenses. I typically shoot directly in the sunlight to capture all the color spectrum. A photographer might not agree with me. That needs to probably be in a well lighted studio, but I've found that since I never had a well lighted studio, being in the sunlight was pretty much the best approach for me.
So this doesn't even have shadows. So do you keep it vertically or horizontally? Because if you keep it horizontal, then the shadow of the camera comes on it, right? So
If
how do you?
I have, like, let's say a 70 millimeter or 50 millimeter lens, like a portrait lens that has doesn't have much skewing, and I stand over the piece, but I stand higher, so I don't get that capture. And then there's times where, yeah, I'll just lean it up against the wall and shoot at an angle where there's good
Hmm.
light. So yeah,
Okay.
I can't stand shadows or the whites. If you see that,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, that's essentially how I do it.
All right. Let's talk about your Tokyo Punks. This
Yeah,
project has been immensely successful. I think this was one of the projects where I got your reference from. Okay, this artist is doing this. It already has 1,000 plus Ethereum volume traded and so many different PFP images in Sabet style.
yeah.
So you call it organically generated. What does that mean?
So organically generated meant that almost all the way to the end, there was a hand painted project. So every element that you see, the eyes, the nose, the hands, the logo, everything that was created, there was no use of the computer all the way to the end, where I vectorized everything and then scaled and layered them, and then used async to create use the platform to create the pieces and generate the pieces. So I wanted, even the script on each side is different. There's 7 different signatures, I think, or 5 different signatures that. So what I wanted it to be, the concept was that if when the computer generates 4,850, I want you to look at one and go, Ali created that by hand. Even though, I wanted that vibration, I wanted that frequency, I wanted that connection. And, I didn't know what to expect. And some of them are really cute, some of them are scary, some of them are, ugly. And they are, some of them I would have never painted if it was just left up to me. But it all worked very, very seamlessly together. And here we have Tokyo Punks 1, basically. There's a video of the creation on YouTube.
Okay, I'll put the
6
link to that.
long. So if you want to see that, you can. I filmed the process.
Async has done a fantastic job as a platform, right, for non-tech artists to create so many things with the technology.
Which one?
Async, the one which you
It's
minted.
been great. Yeah, they've done some wonderful things.
These works are golden, and these are the ones which have the healing codes. And this is your script, Mystic script, isn't it?
Yeah, I love script. Yeah, healing codes was essentially, I had done a lot of one-on-one love script paintings, and because of the healing ability and everything else that I put into these works, I wanted to do something with the healing space, and I wanted to bring healing codes. And so I named it healing codes because I think it was a better name for each individual code that's embedded in these pieces was really important to me to be able to share with more people again. And
Hmm.
due to timing and maybe it was the concept was a little ahead of its time, uh, we didn't sell out, but I haven't stopped the mint either because there is a lot coming that's going to include healing codes as one of my IPs that's going to be connected to my future.
Hmm.
Well, we put a lot of time and effort into this. If you go up on this website and go to gallery, so there's 333 codes, and some of them are editions of 1836. So, like from healing code number 1, there's 36 of them out there. But each one has a different frequency and vibration, right? So if you click on healing codes number 1, we even built a thing where you can look at the frequency, vibration, and the chakra levels on each piece that was generated by the computer. I essentially activated the thing. So once you mint one for yourself, you can go ahead and see what you minted. Maybe your soul needed something a little bit more heart centric, and this one has a very
Oh.
strong heart chakra. Maybe you needed something more crown centric. So this is how, and then it'll give you a level of the vibration and frequency. And this one is kind of high on an overall, but it mathematically pulls it from all the chakra levels to give you what the frequency and vibration levels are.
There's this amazing meditation which I will share with you. It's called Hari Om meditation. It's about chakras. So, as you have put it, I'm sure you know about this, but just for the audience, all chakras have negative and positive both elements in them, right? So, love and jealousy in, I guess, in throat or some place like that. I mean, there's a chart for it, but both of them are there in that. So on the second chakra there is lust as well as creativity. So if creativity is high, the other will be low, and if other is high, the creativity will be low. So there's a great philosophy, and um, which you can experience that yourself, like by observing those chakras. I I think that's very interesting that you put it in the artworks and gave the levels of that OAR. So this really appealed to me.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of time. I mean, even our programmers and dev guys got into it. They went and studied chakras. They went and studied frequency and vibration because they wanted to do it right. And
Hmm.
part of it was magic. I mean, I basically said I closed my eyes and I activated the computer and the code. So you can see this one has got solar plexus centric,
Hmm.
but this is all generated. So even though it's an addition of 23, each one that looks like this will have a different chakra level, vibration, and frequency because each one is
Oh,
generated on its own. So they're all 101s. They're from 333 codes, but they all essentially are 101s, even though they're additions.
very interesting. Wow. I wouldn't have got to know about this if it wasn't for the podcast today. I mean, the inner details of this. Amazing. Time for your super rare. Okay, this is a PFP on Twitter.
Yeah, so
Uh,
that one was actually originally sold on known origin. That right now it's just a placeholder for that collection that's underneath. Because now Super Rare has collections. You can create collections.
oh wow. So what's with the huge eyelashes? You mentioned before you didn't have them and now you have them. So what is going on?
I think when I learned that eyelashes were cute, so I started using them. And then I think I always joke around. I don't remember why they got longer and longer, but I always joke around that once you every time I would make them longer, there was more likes on Instagram. So, but I think it was just a natural progression of how my work got known because of the pouty lips and the long eyelashes.
And the blush circles
Yeah,
also.
absolutely.
I saw a video of making this. It's on your website.
Yes, the origin story. Yeah, that one was an important piece. And that was the year that I basically said, I'm a full-time painter. And I started
Oh,
painting. And my friend goes, I'll come and film you do a painting. And so the NFT was sold. The original is a 6 foot painting that's still here.
yeah. Wow. So many faces. Faces in faces.
Yeah, that's a face.
So what was the thought behind this? Like what was channelizing when you're doing this?
I think when I create again, they're mostly channeled and they come through. But I'm usually drawing. I was usually drawing a lot of faces and the feminine stuff. And you can see like in this piece, like there is not a whole lot of longer eyelashes. They're shorter. You see how the lips aren't really completed
Hmm.
lips, as they are more a couple of lines, right? Uh, just because I didn't have the reference to do that, I didn't have the dexterity for it either, and it
Hmm.
took a long time and different brushes and things like that for me to figure out um, how to do that. But for me, faces were kind of something that I connected with, and obviously 2015, you're probably seeing a lot of me in there, right? A lot of like whatever duality and sadness and anxiety and all that good stuff that I was probably going through.
Hmm. All right. This is very interesting. Thank you so much for expressing, taking us through these artworks. Now it's time for some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
You talked about Japanese philosophy. So what is a thought or a saying that has resonated with you or stayed with you?
From a Japanese perspective, I think my 20 years of martial arts was always key of staying centered no matter what, you know. And even though that was difficult to do, I think today, I feel like when I'm holding the brush, there is a moment that I have to take in to center myself before I start to paint, to connect,
Hmm.
and that's a very Japanese uh, thing for me.
Any particular proverb or something that you remember?
I
Or
don't, I don't have any Japanese proverbs. I don't remember. I should look them
okay,
up.
all right. What are you curious about?
Man, I'm curious about quantum mechanics and how our thoughts affect reality and how to clean the code that we've created that's not serving us anymore and how to rebuild and not obsess over things that don't matter. Those are the things that I really, really think about every day.
What is on your bucket list next?
Mm. I think sculpture. I think it would be great to do something in the
3D,
physical world.
3D or physical sculptures?
Physical. I,
Uh,
I think I don't do it because I don't really know how to do it, but then I got to just do it, you know?
yeah,
3D I like, but I think there's a learning curve there that I need to get
yeah,
over
there
it.
is.
And if I can't, like for me, it's hard because I'm like, if I can't know all of it at the same time, it's a little hard for me to get myself into it. Whereas physical is like, okay, I just need to sit here and like sculpt, and see what comes out.
Absolutely. Name three people, living or dead, that you would have liked to lunch. You would like to have lunch with.
Living or dead, lunch. It would have been cool to hang out with Basquiat. I feel that would have been interesting. Um, living today, God, I'm getting hungry. Maybe with my wife right now. Thank God she's here. Um, and I don't know, Picasso. I would have loved to learn from him. Just his existence would have been interesting to see how an egomaniac, operates and still creates beauty.
What question would you like to ask each of them?
Oh man, I would have probably asked them all whether or not they were downloading at some point. If they were
Downloading.
downloading, yeah, or channeling, or if they were aware, because I feel like they were, right? I mean, you see Basquiat's work, and it's so detailed and so in depth. You see Picasso changing, shaping, reshaping the world by seeing things and making it his own. Those would have been interesting to see if they were aware that they were connected on a different level, because they probably never talked about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was probably not an accepted thing to talk like the way I do back then.
Probably there was no podcast host like me to have them.
Yeah, exactly.
um, what are your favorite movies?
I like spy movies. My favorite spy movie has been Spy Game from the 90s. And then, I watch a lot of documentaries on art and artists. Just recently, I watched the Warhol show on Netflix. That was pretty interesting. His diaries, Warhol diaries. That was pretty incredible.
There's this series on Netflix called Abstract. Have you seen?
Yes, I loved Abstract. Abstract was amazing because I saw it during the time where I was more of a designer than a painter. And to see people going through their, basically their hyper creative method of creating these immaculate things, whether it was huge buildings or, paintings, and them going through their own processes. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful series for anyone to watch. I was hoping that they would do a series 2 or a second season,
There
but
is.
there
There
is
is a second season. Yeah.
no way. Okay, so
Yeah.
I got something to watch. All right.
And for those viewers who are seeing, it's not just on Netflix. You can get it on YouTube also. I
Oh,
checked.
perfect.
Um, and what is amazing about it is they have taken artists from so many diverse fields. Like
Yeah,
there's a shoe designer, there is a graphic designer, there is an
art.
illustrator.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I loved it
it's
because I see us as creatives to be able to impact uh, and do all of those things, right? If I want to design a shoe, I bet you, the other day we are looking for furniture right now for the house, and I'm not finding anything that I'm really connecting to that I want to put my money on. So I'm like, what if I did it myself? My wife's like, go ahead. So I start sketching stuff, and I'm getting all these cool shapes and things like that. And then I show my wife, and then a couple of days later, she goes, "I found a brand that actually is designing work like the ones you created." So which made it easier because now I know what I like. You know what I mean? Um,
Mhm.
and then, but it's already out there because I'm not like a full-on furniture designer. I'm sure somebody has thought of, but it was a good feeling to know that I could create something that others have, that in the profession have already done it, right? So yeah,
All
there's a lot.
right. What advice would you like to give your younger self?
Draw and share every day. I should have done it a
Draw,
long time ago. Draw,
draw and
paint,
share.
yeah, a long time ago. I wish I'd started 20 years ago.
Awesome. What do you do like? What do you like to do for fun?
Hang out with my kids, eat good food. Now I'm starting to work out and swim a lot more, so those are good things. Movies were always a good thing, but my attention span has gone down, so the movie has to be really good. I can't watch a movie longer than for 10 minutes before I'm on my phone. Um, yeah, so and I like to do the
I
games. It's fun.
I have started sleeping through superhero movies these days myself too.
Yeah, it's like the only
Uh,
time we get to sleep.
Are there any social or charitable causes that are close to your heart?
For me, I've been donating to multitudes of charities over the past 10 years, ever since I got into the painting world. Um, Corazon de Vida actually did their branding for them years ago. And they take children who don't have homes, who live at these places, and they support them all the way throughout until they get to college. So I always liked them a lot. Hear Aid Foundation, which I donated quite a bit to, which they provide hearing aids and hearing surgeries for kids who can't hear. Operation Smile is a wonderful one, where with cleft lips and children abroad, Africa and other places, where they'll send oral surgeons to fix their cleft lips. I've donated quite a bit to that. UNICEF, of course, and there's many others that American Heart Society, uh, you know, like Breast Cancer Society. All of these are wonderful. So I tend to donate about $200,000 to $300,000 worth of art annually to any of these, even before NFTs. It was pretty much a big piece of the puzzle for me.
Wow. All right, Sabet, thank you so much. We have come to the end of the show. Any final words or any suggestions for the viewers that you would like to end with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think uh, everybody would benefit from some sort of energy work in their life, clearing up past traumas, raising their awareness, raising their vibration and frequency through these practices. A couple of books, as I said, one of them was uh, Quantum Touch 2, and the other book also is called Energy Codes by Dr. Sue Morter. They're both great books, and they're practical. They actually show you how to do these basic, simple techniques to raise your vibration. And then once you have that kind of going and it becomes a norm for you, everything else starts to fall into place. Sales are secondary, doing business is secondary, but approaching business and sales and art and everything else from that vibration and frequency on a daily basis really is what this whole thing is about for me. And it helps others too.
All right, thank you so much. This has been a perfect episode.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I know